Every time we go online, we're leaving this little trail of digital breadcrumbs. But have you ever stopped to think about who's following that trail and what it really says about you? Today, we are diving deep into the world of information privacy.
So let me just start with this. Let's say I have one single piece of information about you, just your phone number. What could I do with it? Well, chances are I could find your front door. Seriously, I could pop that number into a public site like whitepages.com, do a little reverse lookup, and boom, I might get your name and your address. Then I could just hop over to Zillow.com, type in that address, and see a picture of your house, what you paid for it, its estimated value. It is shockingly easy.
And that little trick, it kind of forces us to ask a much, much bigger question, right? So let's really break this down. All right, here's the game plan. We're going to start by figuring out what information privacy even is. Then we'll look at the good and the bad side of it, trace our own digital footprints, see how our data becomes a business, and finally, look at what happens when companies maybe go a little too far. So, first things first, what do we actually mean when we talk about privacy? Let's get a good working definition here. At its very core, privacy is all about control. Some philosophers call it a zone of inaccessibility. You can think of it like a personal bubble that you create around yourself. It's your power to decide who gets access to you and to your personal info. A really good way to think about this is something called the ladder of privacy. We all do this instinctively. Right at the top, you've got maybe a spouse or a partner. You share almost everything with them. Then you go down a rung, you've got your close friends. Then coworkers, then maybe marketers, and way down at the bottom, rivals. At each step, you share a little bit less. We're constantly managing who's on what rung of our ladder. But here's where it gets complicated. Privacy isn't just good. It really has two very different faces. And this, right here, is the heart of the dilemma. On one hand, privacy gives us the freedom to be our true selves, to build real trust with people, to take off that public mask we all wear. But if you flip that coin, that exact same privacy can be used to hide things, illegal activities, family problems, you name it. It can isolate people when they actually need help. This whole debate has led to some pretty bold statements. Way back in 1999, the CEO of Sun Microsystems, Scott McNealy, famously said this, and that sparked a firestorm of debate that's only gotten hotter since. So is he right?
Well, to even begin to answer that, we've got to look at all the ways we're leaving that trail of digital breadcrumbs, often without even realizing it.
Okay, let's start with an easy one, something we're all familiar with, social media. It feels pretty harmless, just sharing photos with friends. But every little click, every tag creates a data point. Think about Facebook's tag suggestions feature. You upload a picture and it automatically suggests who's in it. Well, how does it know? It learned by analyzing billions of photos we've all uploaded over the years. And with about 100 million new tags being added every single day, it's building this gigantic, searchable map of who we are, what we look like, and who we hang out with. Next up, let's look at something you probably have in your wallet right now, that good old grocery store loyalty card. So here's the deal, the trade-off. You get a few bucks off your cereal. What do they get? They get a perfect, detailed list of every single thing you buy, week after week. Are you buying diapers, organic kale, a lot of ice cream? They're building a pretty intimate profile of your life, one purchase at a time. And it goes even further than that. I mean, look at this. In some stores now, you can step into a body scanner to get a 3D model of yourself just to find the perfect pair of jeans. Super convenient, right? But it also means your exact physical measurements just became another data point in a database somewhere. So what happens to all this data? Where does it all go? Well, it fuels a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that's all about turning your life into a product. And the main tool they use is something called data mining. It's basically like digital detective work. They sift through these mountains of data, your purchases, your tags, your clicks, looking for patterns to build an even more accurate profile of who you are, and more importantly, what you're probably going to buy next. And that brings us to this huge concept, secondary use. This is key. It's when you give a company your information for one reason, like, say, buying a book online, and then they turn around and use it for a completely different reason, like selling it to advertisers or insurance companies. This is the engine that makes the whole data economy run. So all of this really boils down to one critical question. When it comes to sharing all this data, who's really in the driver's seat?
Is it you, or is it the company? Well, it really comes down to two very different models. You've got opt-in, where a company can't do anything with your data unless you actively check a box and say, yes, you have my permission. Then there's opt-out. That's the default. They can share your data freely, and the burden is on you to hunt down some setting somewhere deep in a menu and say no. And guess which one most companies use? Yep, opt-out, because they know most of us will never bother.
But here's the thing. This isn't just a one-way street. There have been some really interesting moments where companies pushed way too far, and people push back hard.
Let's take a look at a classic case study. Facebook Beacon. So back in 2007, Facebook rolled this out. The idea was that whenever you bought something on another website, like say movie tickets on Fandango, it would automatically post that activity to your Facebook wall for all your friends to see. And yeah, you guessed it. It was an opt-out system. And the backlash was immediate. And it was personal. This is a real alert that went out. This guy, Sean Lane, bought a ring for his wife for Christmas. Beacon broadcast that purchase to her and all 700 of their friends, completely ruining the surprise. And stories like this started popping up everywhere, causing real-world embarrassment and anger.
People were furious. An online petition demanding that Facebook change the policy just exploded. In a matter of days, it got over 50,000 signatures.
And you know what? It actually worked. The public outcry was so loud and so overwhelming that Facebook had to back down. They were forced to change Beacon from an opt-out system to an opt-in one. It was this perfect example of how, when people get organized, they can absolutely make a difference.
So, after all of this, we're left with this one final, really big question. In a world where our digital life is basically permanent, where everything we do can be stored forever, who should get to decide what's remembered, and who gets the right to make us forget?